Welcome into episode 11 of the Fourth and Whinges podcast with your hosts, Mark and Rob. Good evening, Rob.
Good evening. 11 already, didn't it fly, eh?
I know. We should have really commemorated the 10th episode last week, really, shouldn't we? But kind of slipped by.
We'll do something special for the 20th, eh?
Do something special for the 100th.
Yes.
in 3 or 4 years' time. So week 2 is in the books. We're sat here recording on Thursday night. So just ahead of week 3's opening game. Week 2 was good. It was entertaining. It was good to watch in parts. Not quite as crazy as week 1, I thought, but there were still some shocks out there for me. Still some interesting points and a lot of injuries.
It's become a bit of a theme this season.
Yeah, definitely. We'll cover some of the injury. Well, we'll cover some of the injuries, in the news section coming up next. Then we're going to review week 2. How did we get on with our picks? What did we think of the games last week? Anything that stood out? Any particular people, teams, etc. we want to shout out? Then we're going to do a new section just on biggest surprises so far. There's a couple of things that I think each of us want to talk about, teams specifically, and maybe players that have stood out so far, been a surprise from what we're expecting. Then we'll do our week 3 picks. Tour watch might be a little bit different to where I'd hoped that was going to go. We've then got Mr. Relevant for this week, and we will finish it off with the whinge of the week, or whinges, potentially.
It's a lot to whinge about at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. News for this week, like I said, pretty much dominated again by injuries. It seems to be the season of injury so far. I mean, I'm trying to think back to the last couple of years to see if it's been this bad. It seems like it's just people are dropping like flies, and it's not just your peripheral people. It's running backs, it's quarterbacks, it's kind of star players that seem to be going down.
It's never ending, isn't it? Even last year when there was no preseason, people thought there might be a lot of soft tissue injuries. It just never came to fruition. But so many this year, it's an absolute crying shame. Yeah,
and as I say, it seems to be a lot of quarterbacks. Andy Dalton, I guess, is the first one I've got on my list to kind of mention. He's now been ruled out for week 3, so it will be game number 1 for Justin Fields to start, and he plays the small matter of the Browns.
It's not ideal, is it?
No. Best offensive line. One of the best defensive lines in the league. You've got Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney coming after him.
I think Malik McDowell's played well, actually, this season. He was second-round pick of the Seahawks, never really done anything, but he's moved to Cleveland, and he's been great in the rotation so far.
Yeah, I think it's such a tough ask for him to go first start against the Browns. I mean, I think he'll have some success in moving the ball with his feet, but I can't imagine he's gonna light the world up. From what I've seen of him already, I think it's going to be a really tough outing for him. Hopefully, for the Bears' sake, Dalton's not going to be out for too long, because, as I say, at the moment, I just feel like it's lambs to the slaughter with Fields. I just don't think he's ready. Some people will argue that throw him in there, let's let him learn on the job type of thing, but I worry for him.
Yeah, you want to try and pick his start, don't you? Usually against a lesser defense. I know they've been trying to mix him in a bit. Didn't look great when he came in against Cincinnati, but thankfully the other quarterback in that game didn't look very good either. So he got away with it. I thought he did well with his legs. He got a crucial, I think it was a third down at one point to sort of ice the game, really. And he did lead them, in inverted commas, to victory. But it's going to be a tough out against the Browns.
Very much so. And then another quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, out for a while was the way that the coach, I think, described it. I mean, he's been put on IR, so I think, isn't that a minimum of like 6 weeks or something? Or is this one of those where...
I think it used to be, but I think it's 3 you can come back.
3 weeks.
I think they changed it last year because of COVID, so I believe it's still 3, but yeah, minimum of 3. So Deshaun Watson time, yes.
If only, yeah. If only. No, so we're going to get a bit more of Davis Mills to see. To be honest, I didn't think he looked that bad what I watched the other day, but I can't see him winning games this young in his career, this early in his career. I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle for him as well. So, the Houston Texans might take a bit of a step back the next couple of weeks with him under center. Derek Carr as well has been injured, but my understanding now is that Gruden said today that he's going to go this week.
Yeah,
so
I believe he's ready, which is a good job because otherwise they'd be relying on Nate Peterman for the start. Mariotta's on IR too, so I mean it'd have been interesting from that point of view. But would it really? I think the Raiders, we'll get on to. They've been a big surprise this season, and saw Peter King. I read his Football Modern America column this week, and he gets a vote for MVP, and he said at the moment his vote would be going to Derek Carr, which I thought was interesting. I thought you'd like that. I thought I'd drop that in.
Yeah, let's move on. I think some other ones. Obviously, Tua is the other big quarterback. There's another one as well, but Tua, again, we'll probably touch on it a little bit later as well. But fractured ribs, I believe, is what he's been diagnosed with, and he definitely won't be playing week 3.
I don't think that matters. I think Jacoby Brissett's quite a good backup, to be fair. He started in this league before. He came in as, I think, 3rd-round pick for the Patriots. He's never going to win you the Super Bowl, but he's probably the ideal backup. He'll come in, he'll do a good job. He can, make some yards on the ground. He's not too dissimilar to Tua in a little way, so the offense will look reasonably similar, I think. From that point of view, I don't think it matters, especially from what we've seen from Tua so far. It's not like he's been tearing it up.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think for me, it might even be an upgrade. So we'll see. We'll see how he gets on.
He'll do him some good just to have a sit and to maybe watch the game and to just have a bit of time out of the firing line potentially.
Yeah. And then Carson Wentz is another one. When I was reading about his injury earlier on in the week, and he's both ankles that are shafted, one high ankle sprain, one low ankle sprain. And he apparently still thinks he can play, but the Colts, as I understand it, are preparing to kind of play without him. So
I think for his sake, just take him out. You don't want him to make it worse. You don't want him to be out for even longer. 1 week of Jacob Eason is far better than 6 weeks of Jacob Eason.
Well, he played not that we care, obviously, because it's preseason. But I thought Jacob Eason looked okay.
Yeah. Sam Ellinger looks very good as well, actually. To be fair,
So I think I'm interested to see him play, actually, Jacob Eason, to see how he gets on. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Carson Wentz just needs to sit, get ready, don't force it back and make things even worse.
It might end up saving him a 1st-round pick as well if he's out for a bit of time. I think it was 70% of the snaps he had to play to upgrade it from a 2nd to a 1st. So it's an interesting.
That might be why the coach is eager for him to sit as well.
Yeah, probably.
So then we've also got the likes of Josh Jacobs, I think, as well. He didn't play at all in week 2, or did he play early doors? Because he certainly, I don't think he played. Did he?
Yeah, I don't know if he took any. I think he was down to start, didn't he? I don't know if he took any snaps. I thought it was interesting that Peyton Barber out-snapped Kenyon Drake. So Drake had 13, not out-snapped, sorry, out-carried Kenyon Drake. So Drake had 7 carries and Peyton Barber had 13. Obviously, they paid Kenyon Drake quite a lot of money in the off-season, getting him in from the Cardinals. I was surprised by that. I don't know if it was situational. They wanted to see what they had, but be interested to see if that continues this week.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if it continues because I personally, I think I said at the time in the chat that for me, I think Barber's a better player. Maybe they've seen that with him in training since he's come, and maybe that was what it was. Or like you say, it could well have been situational and just a coincidence. Then we've got obviously the 49ers haven't had very much luck with running backs, so they've brought in another couple of free agents, Lamar Miller and Duke Johnson this week. So I haven't heard anything since then in terms of whether they're looking to sign them or how that's gone. But I think Lamar Miller is he's only a few years away from having some real success in the league. I always liked Miller at the Dolphins, so I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I thought Miller was one of those that I thought always had a very high ceiling, but never quite happened for him. The Dolphins, he was always in and out. He went to the Texans. I think we all expected he was going to, couple of 1,000 yards guaranteed, but it just never really happened. But I think he's a good back to bring in. I think I've mentioned Duke Johnson's name far more than I would like this off-season. He was on the Jags practice squad for quite a while. I've always quite liked him. He's probably one a bit similar, more of a receiving back for me, so probably more of a third down back. I believe Trey Sermon's good to go, Kyle Shanahan has said, for this weekend.
Right, okay.
Elijah Mitchell is, I think, trending to start, but I mean, they've had zero luck this season. We talked about Jason Verrett last time round, and they do have Kerryon Johnson on their practice squad as well. I was surprised Detroit let him go, and then he went to the Eagles, and the Eagles let him go. He was, I always thought he was a decent runner when I've seen him in action. The only other back they've got is Trenton Cannon, who I'll be honest, I know nothing about, but it's a fantastic name. The puns and the commentators will be loving that.
Kerryon Johnson, I loved in college, and I was a massive fan of them drafting him when the Lions when they took him in the draft. So, like you said, I'm a bit surprised that he's not really stuck anywhere since, and don't know whether that's a character thing or an effort thing that people are seeing. Potentially, I don't know, but certainly he had the talent in college. So we'll see where that goes. Jarvis Landry's another one, I guess, big name that I think has gone on to IR this week as well. Brown receiver.
We can talk about the Browns later, but I thought they did really well to the way they altered their game script when Landry went off. Obviously, without Odell Beckham as well, but get into that in the review. Yeah.
And then the only other thing we kind of wanted to note was Zach Ertz. So he's been placed on the COVID list, but we think he is vaccinated, so should be potentially in time for their game this weekend on Monday night.
It's almost like there's a benefit to getting the vaccine, isn't it, or something? So,
almost.
Listening to Cole Beasley. But.
I was just about to say, don't try telling that to Cole.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'd be a massive loss anyway. He's only had 3 receptions for 40 yards in his first 2 games. I think Dallas Goedert's struggled as well, actually. Everybody thought he was going to take the leap, but it's not really happened. Again, a bit situational. Hurts as a runner. Who's he built a rapport with? There's a few more screens and things.
I was just about to say, I think it's offense. I think he's maybe built more again towards what Jalen Hurts can do, and maybe he's more of a, like you say, a screen guy.
RPOs.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's why the Titans aren't featuring as heavily as we might have expected. But yeah, so that's kind of the injuries that we wanted to talk about. In relation to week 2. In the picks, you pulled a game back on me.
Yes, in your face.
So you got 10 out of the 16 games right. I got 9. So slightly better than week 1.
Slightly.
But still a few surprises in there, I think. And, I think for me, probably the biggest... Well... Go on, you go first. Anyone in particular you want to talk about?
Well, what I was actually going to talk about is before we sort of got started, I was going to give a bit of a shout out to some of our listeners because we've created a group on ESPN Pigskin Pick'em, and let's just say Mark and I aren't doing brilliantly in that. I'm below Mark, but I think Girth is top. He's 22-10, I think. So shout out to Girth. Gaz is just, I think, a game back behind him. So they've picked really well. Yeah, Gaz is 20-12. Kutch, I think, is 20-12 as well. So yeah, they've been blown us out of the water. You're 17-15. I'm 16-16. So I'm at the Rams under Jeff Fisher at the minute.
We need to up our game, I think. So
we do.
Yeah, we'll get.
I'll let Gaz and Girth present Gaz, Girth, and Coach present the podcast next week.
Potentially.
In terms of the games themselves, I don't know. I'll let you sort of cover KC Baltimore. I mean, I saw the most of the Chargers Cowboys game, so that was a sort of a 9:25 kickoff. It was just classic Chargers yet again. You can take them out of San Diego. You can get rid of Anthony Lynn and his poor in-game management, but the Chargers are going to charge, as Dan Handers on the Around the NFL podcast says. It was a great game. It was a great watch, but Oh my God. Yeah, Herbert made some amazing plays. He had one fantastic throw to Keenan Allen, who fell, and there was an interception in the end zone. They had a late touchdown ruled out for an illegal shift. So I think I went to the toilet at that point and came down and couldn't understand what had happened. I think that was on Jared Cook. And then there was a very strange call where they called Justin Herbert for being in the grasp, even though he was just about to, got his throw off. And they were just their own worst enemy. That 2 touchdowns wiped off the board. They'd missed field goal, 12 penalties for 99 yards. It was insane. I mean, Mike McCarthy did his best to let them back in at the end. I don't know if you've read about it, but he basically was running the clock down, burnt 20 seconds off the clock when he still had the timeout. Could have made some more yards. As it was, he left Greg Zerline with a 56-yard field goal to win it, and Greg the Leg knocked it over. But McCarthy apparently said that the clock he was watching in the stadium had stopped working, and that the one that Kellen Moore was looking at was obscured from his view, yet still somehow he managed to take a timeout with 4 seconds remaining. God knows what went on there, but yeah, it was a hell of a game. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I think it's one the Chargers will feel that they've let slip away. I think that they're both very good teams. I expect them both to make the playoffs. I think they're both from offensively. They've both got obviously very good quarterbacks. They've got really good receiving cores. I think CeeDee Lamb is one of my favourite wide receivers in the league. Love him to bits. I think Micah Parson, I think he's worth a good shout in this game. I think we've talked about him already in the build-ups to this season, and I think was he your pick for defensive rookie of the year potentially?
Yes.
Yeah, I think if he stays outside linebacker, I think he's got an even better chance because there's potential there for obviously your splash plays, your sacks, your that kind of thing. So I think he's got a real chance of that, and he played really, really well. 8 total pressures, I think he had, 1 sack, 3 quarterback hits, an overall grade of nearly 90, 89.9, and a pass rush. Why is it so difficult to say that?
It's very difficult to say.
Grade of 90.8. So I think you don't get much better than that. And for somebody who hasn't really done that as a rule, certainly not.
I don't even think he did that in college.
No, he did it every now and again on a play, but I don't think he I think wants to do that. I think in interviews I've seen with him, he said that he would prefer to do that. Obviously, it's a better paid position, isn't it? So why?
He's not short of confidence, is he?
No. So I think, even when all their starters are fit, he's probably only second behind. Is it DeMarcus Lawrence? Is that his name? The star pass rusher of theirs. He'd probably only be second to him anyway. And
they've got such riches in the in the other linebacker position. So if you're struggling up front, stick him up there, and then you've still got Jalen Smith, Leighton Van Der Esch, Keanu O'Neal, Jamie Davis. Was he the other pick as well? No, that was Jabril Cox.
Jabril Cox, Jabril Cox, LSU linebacker. So so I think I'm interested to see how that goes and see what they decide to do with him moving forward, because he's certainly shown he can do that. Yeah,
absolute machine. And fair play to the Cowboys actually for building strength on strength. Draft wise, they could have gone in a number of different positions. They had a lot of needs, but they went best player available, and they've been rewarded for it.
Yeah, definitely.
He can be maligned sometimes, Jerry Jones, but fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of like the Chargers, Herbert, like you said, he was up and down, and unusually seemed to come unstuck when it mattered. I think that was one of the things that was so impressive about him last season. I think he's under pressure. He seemed to play better than ever, and 4 big time throws, but 3 turnover worthy plays. Grade in the mid 60s. Wasn't his best game by any means. So very up and down, but he's clearly really talented. And as I said before, I expect them both to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that feels slightly harsh to me. I thought on the tape he probably looked better than that, to be honest. He was let down a bit at times. Some of it was unlucky, but yeah, he was up and down. The other thing I was just going to touch on was Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott and their usage. So Pollard had 13 carries, 109 yards, 1 touchdown. Zeke had 16 carries, so still had more carries, but 71 yards and a touchdown. I thought this isn't a Zeke criticism at all. I thought Zeke looked good. And then receiving wise, Pollard again had 3 receptions, 31 yards, no touchdowns. Obviously, Zeke had no receptions, but I think it'd be interesting if we do see that become more of a committee back situation. I think Zeke sometimes isn't helped maybe because he's quite a good blocker. So they maybe use him a bit more for that at times. But Pollard thought looked fantastic. He had 3 20-plus yard plays. And just on, if you've got him on the field on passing situations, you can very quickly alter it, allow him scrimmage, give it to him, he can run, he can tear teams to shreds. So I think we'll see a lot more sort of 60-40 split as opposed to Zeke just pounding it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think unless you've got a back like a Derrick Henry, then nobody can say that you shouldn't be splitting the backfield. I think there's just nothing between them for me. And Cowboys fans absolutely adore Zeke, and I get that. But at the end of the day, Pollard's outplaying him at the moment.
He is.
He deserves the touches and the possessions he's getting, definitely. Yes, I mean, do I have to talk about the Kansas City game?
You don't have to.
So frustrating. I'm not going to dwell on it too much because, again, it's not as we've said before, it's not a Chiefs and Jags podcast. It's an NFL and an American football in general podcast. But it was a tough watch towards the end, that game, I think, for me. Just defensively, we look lost. We look absolutely lost. I could reel statistics out till the cows come home, but it's best to say that we rank near the bottom in pretty much every every defensive statistic and grade that you can find out there. They ran for 251 yards on us, which it's not insane, but it's a big number. And when you can't stop the run game and you play in Baltimore, you're just feeding into their hands. We proved in the first 10, 15 minutes of that game that if you make him throw the ball, he's pretty useless. And yet they were still able to just compete with it. A team that runs the ball should not be able to keep pace with a team who throws the ball as well as we do. It just shouldn't work like that. It doesn't work like that generally, and that's because teams can usually defend a little bit better than we can. And I really worry that in order for us to continue to beat the good teams, because we'll steamroll some teams, but in order to beat the good teams, we need to play better than that. It's as simple as that, and we've just not been good enough through 2 games.
I think you've got to give the Ravens some credit. So from that side, Lamar, when Tyrann Mathieu picking him off on that first drive and taking him into the house for a pick 6. He didn't look great. He's not had a great start to the season. He wasn't good in week 1. But when they've got the running game that good, they can beat you so many ways. They've got so many options. They're just mixing it up, giving the defense different looks and just confusing them all the time. They're going to win games. I know it shouldn't work, but it does. And it just shows how well coached they are, how good their coordinators are, and just what a difference Lamar is. I do not like him as a quarterback at all. But there was one pass he threw to Hollywood Brown where he jumped to the line of scrimmage and threw it when he was in midair. In fact, it was a busted coverage on the Chiefs' behalf, and then Hollywood ran it in for the touchdown. But I did showcase him as a passer, and I think the Ravens do deserve credit. The Ravens, especially given all their injuries they've had. Latavius Murray got a touchdown. Tyson Williams looked good. I think on another day you'd have won. You still put up 35 points, didn't you? And you were very unlucky at the end with Hilaire's fumble. Owe made a great play, Dafe Owe. And I think that was Edwards Hilaire's first ever fumble in the NFL, so he's not to blame at all. And we were just beforehand. Sorry, I'll finish. Demarcus Robinson got a touchdown, Baron Pringle got a touchdown, and he was mixing it up. He was staying to different backs. It wasn't all just Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So I agree that there were areas that you weren't great in. I agree you've not the best start to the season, but I trust Andy Reid to work out, and I think you've got to give some credit to the Ravens as well.
Yeah, I think the credit where credit's due. At the end of the day, it's hard to win in the NFL. You've got to give credit to a team that wins. And yes, by all means, this wasn't the Chiefs totally and utterly imploding in the way that some teams do. But my point on it though is that a team that is supposed to be one of the top 2 or 3 favourites to win the Super Bowl has to be able to defend the run better than what, because you're supposed to. You're supposed to be able to defend the run. Belichick, for example, right? He goes into a game and what he'll do is he'll take away his opponent's strongest player or biggest asset, and we all know that going into that game that's the running game, and yet the team goes and does that to you. Now, again, you could argue that that's because of Baltimore. I would argue that it's more to the lack of ability on the Chiefs' defensive side. But we'll leave it there and see where the Chiefs go from here, because we've got another tough game this week. So
you're always harsher on the ones you love as well, aren't you?
This is very true.
And apologies there. That was my web browser that decided it was just going to start making a funny noise. I've muted
it. Any other games? I guess if we run through quickly through the results. So in terms of the shocks for me, the biggest one for me personally was probably the Raiders over Pittsburgh. Just going into it, we both picked Pittsburgh to win that game, and it was one that I took a good look at during the week. I watched it back then the last couple of days, and I thought it was quite an evenly matched first half. I think I can't remember the score at halftime, but I think it was very evenly matched. Hunter Renfro's been playing really, really well out of the slot. I mean, he's a good player. I liked him in college, and he's playing really well so far. Ruggs has decided that he can catch the ball, and he can actually be a wide receiver, which is only going to help, because obviously he had a really down kind of rookie season last year. The pass rush for Vegas was good again, not quite as good as week 1, but it was still very good. They looked good in that area. I think the one comment I would make on the Raiders, particularly I think in the first half, I think they looked good between the 20s, but then when you got into the red zone, I think they seemed to struggle a little bit. Maybe you expected to see a bit more Darren Waller down there because he had quite a quiet game.
Yeah, 5 catches for 65 yards. We appear to have just lost Mark. So, Darren Waller did have a quiet game. 5 catches for 65 yards. He's back. He's back.
I thought they looked good. I think they've certainly been a surprise to me with how well they've played. And we'll get onto that in a second. But
we'll talk about that more.
What were your thoughts on the game? And did you see it? Did you see much of it?
I didn't see it live. No, I saw a few highlights. I thought, much like you, I thought the real positive was that Darren Waller didn't have to shoulder the load. It showed that they did have a game plan outside of that. Foster Moreau came through clutch at the end with his touchdown grab. Brian Edwards had a touchdown that was erased by a penalty. As you say, Henry Ruggs sort of showing that sort of big play that we all thought he'd be burning people down the sidelines, and we saw that with his 61-yard touchdown over the middle. Derek Carr was very good. He had passing line of 28 of 37 for 382 yards, 2 touchdowns, 126.2 passer rating. Shook off that injury that we weren't sure if he was going to come back into the game. He's playing really well. He's not MVP, but he's playing very, very well. I think one other stat that I was just going to pull out as well was in week 1 they had a 54.5% pressure rate, 31% pressure rate on Sunday. Crosby and Ngakoue again were sort of leading the way. They accounted for 11 pressures. Crosby had 6 and Ngakoue had 5. Both of them caused a turnover despite not having a sack. So again, they were, as you sort of saying before, their pass rushes, it's still working.
Yeah, definitely. I think Pittsburgh probably are about where I expected them to be honest. I was last season when they got off to 11-0 last year, and everybody was, certainly if you a Pittsburgh fan, was kind of singing their praises, and I never thought they were that good. to be 11-0, and then obviously they lost 4 or 5 in a row maybe towards the end of the season, or 3 or 4 or something like that. And I think they came back down to earth a little bit, and I think they've kind of leveled out as to where they are now. I think they're a decent team, especially defensively, but I don't trust Big Ben at this point in his career. I really don't. I think this has to be his last season for me. I don't see him kind of continuing after there. I think they need to freshen that passing game up and that offense up. Harris is good. I mean, at the end of the day, Harris is a good player, and he's always going to do well. Looked good. I think he scored that diving touchdown, I think, in this game as well. So I think Pittsburgh are who they are, but I think it was a very good win for the Raiders.
Did you see his stiff arm on Jonathan Abram?
Yeah.
That was amazing. He just absolutely owned him. He got his arm out, shoved him in the face, and just knocked him straight over.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy as well.
Yeah, exactly. Check it out. It was well worth a watch. Yeah, you're right on the Big Ben's. It's a totally different offense now. They're very limited. The offensive line's very poor. Harris probably hasn't had the impact that people thought he would have, but I think that's down to the offensive line. It's down to teams probably stacking the box a lot more because they're not afraid of Big Ben doing it through the air, because they just don't think he's capable of it. They're definitely going to be in the market for a quarterback high in the forthcoming draft. They've got Mason Rudolph. It's not looked good in limited action. They've got Dwayne Haskins as a bit of a reclamation project. I can't really see that working out. And I think they've still got Josh Dobbs on the roster, but they've got no real options. That they're stuck with what they've got, barring an in-season trade that will not happen because they won't boot Big Ben out in this season, even though they should.
Any thoughts at all on the Denver-Jacksonville game, or are we skipping past that game?
I mean, it sounds a bit like I don't want to talk about it because the Jags lost, and not that doesn't bother me, it does, but I just didn't think it was a good game. And if I wasn't a Jags fan, would we be talking about it? I think we can talk about it briefly, but I'd rather talk about sort of New Orleans, Carolina, to be honest. If we are going to talk about the Jags again, Lawrence, a couple of interceptions, but again made some good throws. We sort of spoke about Peyton Manning's rookie season. I'm really not worried about that. It's still for me just the coaching staff really that concerns me there, and the scheme. I think you've called out. Did you want to give your stat on Chenault? If you've got it to hand, if not, I can.
Yeah. So I mean, he didn't grade well, 41.4 grade, but I think the interesting stat line, like you say, 2 receptions on 7 targets, 2 drops for a humongous -3 yards, and for me, he's your best playmaker, and when your best playmaker or best weapon, goes for -3 yards, you're on to a losing battle, aren't you? I think, and what all I would say on it, I mean, like you said, let's not spend too much time on it, but we know that Lawrence is a really talented quarterback. Yes. So the struggles that he's having they're not all down to him. And I just want to see some kind of sign that they know what they're doing. That would be my thought if I was a
Me too.
In terms of Denver, obviously they're in the Chiefs division, so I do pay attention to kind of how the Broncos and Chargers and Raiders are doing. They don't scare me necessarily. I think Von Miller's played well. That's a little bit of a worry, because he is a good player, and we know that it's more difficult if you can get pass rush. So, the fact that he's back and playing well is a slight concern, but I'm not overly worried. I think they're solid. They are what I expected them to be, really, with Teddy at quarterback, which is solid and with some upside, but not necessarily going to blow people away. And I think that's kind of what they are.
Yeah, fair enough. I think, the only other thing to say on that game was Jamal Agnew take a bow, 102-yard punt return for a touchdown. That was that was good to see. That was great. But again, that just put a bit of gloss on the score.
Helped. I was going to say it helped with the end result, didn't it? The end, the stat line at the score line at the end. Sorry. So sorry, you wanted to talk about the
New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers. Especially given the week 1 that Jameis had, I think that was, you're never going to throw for 5 touchdowns off 150 yards ever. That's just an absolute one-off fluke. But to see the way that that Carolina played and that defense that Phil Snow has put together. I think we spoke about it a little bit last week, but their draft class from 20. What year are we in now? 2020 is now looking to pay off where they selected all defensive players. Joe Brady's looking very good as OC. I'm not just rubbing Sam Darnold in your face at all, but I thought he played well. He's had 2 good weeks. That doesn't, one swallow doesn't make a summer at all, but I've seen a lot more from him this time than I ever saw from him at the Jets. I think he's in a far better situation.
Yeah.
Far happier. He's got some far better weapons. We don't need to go into it again, but he's looking good. And I think in that system, if he keeps this level of play, then they'll win some games. They've also got a very soft schedule coming up of Carolina. So next up, they're at Houston, obviously tonight. So that's a win for me. They're at Dallas, which is obviously tough. But then after that, they've got Philly at home, Minnesota at home, they're at the Giants and at the Falcons. So I could easily I could see them being 7-1 after that. Puts them in a really strong position, especially with the beating the Saints and that division not looking too clever outside of Tampa Bay, really.
Yeah, no, I think I would also call out Joe Brady. I think he's what he did at LSU in the year or two that he was there, turned Joe Burrow into a Heisman winner, and made that offense the best offense that I think I've ever seen in college football. That's for sure. He's clearly a very talented coordinator. I think, yes, you have to give some credit to Darnold, and I'm prepared to give some credit to Darnold. I don't expect it to continue. I genuinely don't, and I'm not just beating the drum for the sake of it. I don't believe he's a top-tier quarterback. I think he's in a really, really good position with a really good offensive coordinator, with one of the best wide receivers in the league in DJ Moore in terms of a slot receiver, but who can play outside. He's got the best, one of the best running backs in the league in McCaffrey, of course. He is in a really good position, and if he'd have stunk in this offense, there was seriously no hope for him. He has looked good, above average.
High praise.
Above average. I think he's ranked about 12th so far.
If he finishes 12th, that's a massive win. Yeah.
Of course.
I don't think he's elite at all, but if he can be top 16, then it's
Yeah, it will give him a chance. It really will give him a chance, and obviously, huge improvement over the last few seasons for the Panthers. So, good. In terms of the Saints, I mean, is this a truer reflection on what the Jameis ran Saints is going to look like? Went from sort of an 89.5 grade down to a 40.7 grade this week.
It's difficult. I mean, he's got nobody to throw the ball to. I mean, he's got Alvin Kamara. I know you want to talk about why he wasn't used, but in terms of wide receivers, Marquez Callaway were expected to come in and take a load of touches, but that's not happened. His top receiver is Deontay Harris, who is up until now just a special teams ace, and outside of that, it's fairly grim. He's got Adam Troutman, who's a second-year tight end. He's got Juwan Johnson, who's a second-year tight end, being converted from a wide receiver. So it's difficult for him. He did rush for a touchdown, so I was glad that he's using his legs a bit more again, which is good to see. But the passing wasn't pretty at all.
No, like you say, my biggest takeaway really when I looked at some of the snap counts and things on the game, and when I was kind of doing a bit of research, is Alvin Kamara. He had 8 rushes and six receptions in the entire game. Like, he's their best player, and he's seeing that much of the ball. That's wrong. If you are struggling at wide receiver, that's when you should be running the ball a little bit more.
Dump it off. Just get your playmaker.
Throw to him. I don't know. It just didn't look. It didn't look like a Sean Payton offense to me, and that's what was the troubling thing for me, because I expected, even with Jameis's kind of faults and flaws, I expected the floor to be higher than that. So I'm interested to see what happens from here, and I think they're a really tough team to pick moving forward in terms of in the pick'em, because which version are you going to get? What sort of New Orleans is going to turn up?
let's see how they get on against the Patriots.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. It's a really tough game to pick, that, me. We'll get onto it in a bit.
Yeah.
Any other games that you wanted to pick? Oh, there's one more I wanted to kind of just briefly touch on, because not necessarily the most attractive game ever.
I think I might know what game this is.
The 49ers Eagles game. I think if you like your defense and you like punters and kickers, I think this was the game for you. Just totally different to most of the games that I watched. I think Philadelphia got off to a really good start. They should have been ahead at halftime, easily. But the San Francisco red zone defense kept them in the game, basically, made them, kick field goals as opposed to, scoring touchdowns. And there's just no way in the world that Philadelphia should have been leading at halftime. And then they kind of wore them down in the end, really, and then ended up winning, of course. But one player I wanted to just kind of point out, I think we may have mentioned him already before.
Yeah, possibly.
But Jordan Mailata, who's their left tackle, he's one of the players who've come through the international player pathway. A Samoan Australian guy who they took in the 7th round of the 2018 draft. So it's like 3 years since he was drafted. And he's obviously been there on the practice squad or whatever. Kind of earning his stripes, if you like, and he just signed a big contract recently, I think, and he's obviously now their left tackle and looks amazing. He's currently the fourth overall grade of any offensive lineman in the league. So playing really, really well. And I think ultimately, like San Francisco, they are the better team. They won in the end, but it was it was a bit of a slugfest for them.
I think the thing that surprised me most in that game was Trey Lance never got on the field, which I was expecting him to, be swapped in and out quite a bit. I know he wasn't heavily utilised in week 1, but I've not got a point, but it's
no. I think to me, I think it probably points to the fact that he's probably struggling in practice and stuff. I think with such a tight game and not a lot of points being scored and what have you, I think they probably wanted to just keep Garoppolo in there and just what you're getting with him. I think if they start to blow certain teams out and be up quite a few scores, that's probably when you're going to see him and what have you. So they're probably just playing that safe. But another steady game from Jalen Hurts as well. I thought he played well at times. It was an interesting game to watch. Anything else you want? Any other particular game you want to talk about?
No, I think we can move on. For me, I won't subject it to an analysis of Zach Wilson's 4 interceptions. So
let's just say that there are brighter days to come for Zach, and leave it there. So in terms of our biggest surprises so far, I think we share one of these, and that's the Raiders. You start if you want. I mean, very impressive. They beat Baltimore in week 1. They beat Pittsburgh in week 2. Before the season, I wouldn't have expected them to win either of those games. I didn't pick them to win either of those games.
No. Imagine how good they'd be if they hadn't traded away half their offensive line. I mean, like Rodney Hudson's in Carolina, well, they'd be unstoppable. I mean, they didn't have a plan, but it turns out you don't need a plan when you've got Derek Carr. So, lots of little faith. I think the one thing that did stand out for me, obviously we've sort of talked about the pass rush, but on Derek Carr, from the start of 2020, no quarterback has graded better on 3rd down. And I think looking at the stats again, he's been attacking downfield a lot more. So he's got a 10.8 yard average depth of target since 2020. It's the 4th highest in the NFL, and it's only 0.3 yards behind Patrick Mahomes. So I just think he's putting up numbers. He's obviously feeling a bit more confidence in that offense now. Gruden's come in. When Gruden came in, there were a lot of rumours that they wanted to get rid of him, and I think you and I both thought Mariota would be starting multiple games for them and would take over as a starter. But he's shown he can do it. He's making some big plays.
Well, because I think we touched on it in the off season potentially. That isn't it like a contract year for him, or is he got 2 years left on his contract? He's coming towards the end of his contract, I think. Carr, and I think we've both said in the past that it was a big year for him. Gruden is sort of halfway through his 10-year contract, I think, nearly as well now, and I think I'm pretty sure he wouldn't want to just plod on with a quarterback who's played like Carr has maybe in the last couple of years or whatever. So I think it was always a big year for him, and don't get me wrong, yeah, he's playing really well. I think he's currently the ninth graded quarterback from a PFF point of view, 81.0. So yeah, playing really, really good. And like you say, it's the long game, it's the big players that are standing out to me. And he's always shown that in one of his early years. I think we did a bit of a deep dive with Derek Carr during the offseason, I think, and we were looking at that. And I don't know if it was his second or third year in the league, but looked really good. Was pushing the ball downfield, and he has the receivers. I mean, he had them last year, but it didn't quite work. He had Aguilar as well as Henry Ruggs, and he didn't quite work last year. So far, it is working. They showed it in flashes last year. They beat the Chiefs by playing that kind of football.
Well, that was when Henry Ruggs had 70-odd yard reception that game, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's definitely there. My biggest concern for them has always been really the kind of the defense, and that's as a whole, it's not ranked that highly, but one of the key points there is pass rush, and they are playing so well there. And if you're going to put the quarterback under pressure as often as they are, you're going to create turnovers, you're going to create 3 and outs, and you're going to be in games. So yeah, certainly a surprise to me. I expected them to be 0-2 at this point. They're sat there, probably top of the division.
Sitting pretty at the top of the West with the Broncos behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. So kudos to the Raiders.
No, absolutely, massive shout out.
It pains me to say that.
I think going forward, if they can, if Ruggs can be who we think Henry Ruggs is, as a defense, who do you target? You obviously got to put quite a lot of men on Waller, who's going to be running their sort of intermediate routes. They've got the running game, which performed at the weekend. So there's potentially some big plays down the field that Ruggs can make, or Brian Edwards or whoever. And Carr's shown he can get them the ball. So I think it'd be interesting to see if they maintain it. They could be 2-15, but.
Well, exactly. That's it, isn't it? I think there are bigger tests to come, for sure, because you've got to win in division on a regular basis to kind of earn your way into the playoffs. That's how it works. So they've got to start winning games in division. But just on that, in terms of Ruggs and Waller, if I'm not for a second saying that Ruggs is anything like Tyreek Hill, but the Chiefs is a 1-2 with Hill and with one wide receiver and one tight end, and you can see glimpses of that there, and I think it's not a bad kind of thing to copy and to try and aim for. So yeah,
they're at Miami next. If we move on to the picks, I think we've both taken them. I don't think, spoiler alert, but it's another good game, and then if that's 3-0, you're flying. You're off to a really good start, but we will see. Especially when, in theory, they could be 2 games clear of the Chiefs if it doesn't go well for us this week, which is a big thing. Even sort of 3 games in, so yeah, big weekend for the AFC West, really. The other game. The other surprise to me, and I touched on it before when we were going through the picks there, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk about that 49ers-Eagles game is the Philadelphia Eagles. I think, they beat, who did they beat in week 1? They crushed Atlanta, didn't they? Yeah.
In week 1, 32-6, and then they lost, as I say, narrowly to San Francisco at the weekend. Looked so much better than I thought they would be on both sides of the ball. I think, if I remember rightly, did I have them ranked as my 31st team?
Yeah, looking back. How dare you, Mark? I mean,
well, exactly. I mean, my bottom 3 was Detroit, Philadelphia, and Houston, and Vegas 29. I am not looking good at this point.
I mean, at least I had Philadelphia 30th, so I gave them some credit.
So I think that they've definitely been a surprise. Jalen Hurts, I mean, going in, I would have said he's a worse thrower of the ball than Lamar Jackson, and that's saying something. And he's clearly not looked that way so far. He's been really good. I think he's currently ranked. I'm just taking a quick look now. He's currently the 9th highest grader from a passing point of view so far this season. With an 80.7 passing grade, which for Jalen Hurts, I would have just never thought that was even possible.
Yeah.
So far, three touchdowns, no interceptions, all coming in that first game against Atlanta. But it just looks almost a different player now. I don't know whether this is something that the new kind of coaching staff have introduced. Is it a different style of play that they're playing? Maybe is it the introduction of I can't think of his name, the wide receiver Devonta Smith. They've got Kyle Fuller coming back at some point, you would hope, to add to that.
They got a good game. Jalen Reagor had a good game as well, actually.
Jalen Reagor, sorry, yeah. So they've impressed me. They really have. A big surprise to me how well they've played. Again, Mailata, that I've said, has played really, really good. They're another team that have done like the Raiders, really good from a pass rushing point of view, 8th at the moment in pass rush. So both sides of the ball, there are promising signs there for them, and much further ahead than I expected them to be at this point.
Yeah, definitely. No, playing really well. And we need to think of another word for pass rush because it's too difficult to say. We need. I don't know. We'll workshop that and we'll come up with something.
Anything else you wanted to call out? Anybody in particular, or any teams?
Not really. Just I think if we're doing a quick whip round, I think the Texans have surprised us. They obviously came out of the gate strong against Jags in week 1. They ran the Browns close in week 2. I think now they've got Davis Mills in, they're going to struggle, especially coming up against the Panthers tonight with how dominant their D has been. It'll be interesting to see how they get on. I mean, Davis Mills could be competent. He didn't play too much at Stanford. He was injured quite a lot as well, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But as Chrissy called out in the sleeper chat this morning, Brandon Cooks has had a good start to the season. He's always a reliable wide receiver. They've got 87 different running backs, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think they might sputter and be sort of regress a bit. Back to the mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll move on then. So the week 3 games. I'm going to make this statement now, and it's going to make me look really silly next week, and we'll all have a laugh. But as I'm going through these picks, there's 2 that we disagree on right this week.
We need more than that, mate, don't we?
And they are the Atlanta at New York Giants. Right, you've gone for the Falcons, I've gone for the Giants, and then you've picked the Chargers over the Chiefs. Right, those are the 2 games that we disagree on, and the Chargers-Chiefs game, yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that going either way, right? I can't really see the Giants game going either way. I don't really know what you're smoking on that one. But all the other games, I've looked through before this podcast with a view to potentially changing some just so we have something to talk about. And I'm not prepared to change anything because I think they're pretty much nailed on. So if I'm not at least 14 out of 16 this week,
I think the one that stands out to me, we've both taken the Rams at home to Tampa Bay. And I know I stand by it. I wouldn't change it, but you can't bet against Brady. Okay,
let's go. If I'm not 13 out of 16, then
no. Yeah. I did the same and looked through and went, yeah.
Very quickly, Carolina at Houston. Yeah, we've got Carolina. It's no brainer. Indianapolis at Tennessee. We both picked Tennessee. You could argue this potentially is a more of a toss-up, but not when Wentz isn't in there, and they've not looked great so far.
No, and not when Tennessee seemed to have figured a few things out. Got Derrick Henry, rolling last week against the Seahawks. So
yeah. So I think Tennessee are nailed on pretty much there. You've got Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. If Cincinnati beat Pittsburgh, I'll be over the moon. But they don't tend to play well against the Steelers. They kind of have their number. So, and Pittsburgh are at home. They've got the Bears at Cleveland. We've touched on that already with Fields playing his first game. Baltimore at Detroit. I expect Baltimore to win that kind of comfortably. New England, New Orleans, maybe this is another one that could go either way. But that last week's performance by New Orleans has just scared me. And New England at home.
And we saw what Bill Belichick did to Zach Wilson, so he's going to have a similar game plan for Jameis.
Arizona at Jacksonville. We'll move on. Washington at Buffalo. New York Jets at Denver. I nearly picked them just to try and be stubborn and just to say I believe in Zach Wilson, but I don't think that's the game for
Zach Wilson. Vic Fangio, the defenses look very good.
The corners and everything.
They're just a great defense. Absolutely.
Miami at Las Vegas. Again, we've spoken about them. Raiders looking really good. Seattle at Minnesota. I expect Seattle to win that game. They've looked good in parts so far, I think. So I expect them to turn over Minnesota.
Plus, if there's any last-minute kicks this time, Minnesota ain't going to be kicking it. So, sorry, Greg Joseph, if you're still even on their team at this point. I don't know.
San Francisco, Green Bay at San Francisco. I've seen nothing from Green Bay so far that would scare me as a 49ers fan. And then Philadelphia at Dallas. It's a divisional rivalry, but again, Dallas are at home. Dak's looking really good. I think there's. If it turns out to be another week with like loads of surprises, then we're in for one hell of a season. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, bring it on, absolutely.
Bring it on. Bring it on. So,
so the ones we differ. Atlanta, I've got Atlanta beating the Giants. I'll be honest, I just hate the Giants. That's kind of where that's coming from. I think Daniel Jones has looked very good for the last couple of weeks. Thursday night against Washington, possibly his best game I've ever seen him have. Again, I remain to be convinced on that point. Atlanta, though, I just think you've got Matt Ryan, you've got Calvin Ridley. They should be putting up points. They've got Hayden Hurst and Kyle Pitts at tight end. Fair enough, your running game isn't great when Cordell Patterson's your leading rusher so far this season. But I mean, it's the defense for me for Atlanta. They're awful. I don't trust the Giants. Saquon isn't fully back. Daniel Jones has always got a mistake in him. Probably, the Giants will win, but Joe Judge just winds me up as well, and I just want the Giants to lose. To be perfect.
Fair enough. I mean, I do think, like you said, I think Daniel Jones has looked quite good so far this season. I think he's the sixth highest graded quarterback from a PFF point of view. I think he's second best passing grade behind only Brady. So he's played really well himself. So, and they're at home as well. I do expect them to win. But like you said, I think Atlanta, in my view, should be the Dallas of early last year, where they put up a lot of points but can't defend anybody. But they seem to just not be able to put up the points. So they're in real trouble at the moment, it seems. And then we've obviously picked differently with Chargers Chiefs.
Purely because I knew you'd pick the Chiefs.
I mean, we're at home. We need to be winning this game. If we're gonna defend the AFC West, we need to be winning this game. And I didn't think I'd be saying that in week 3. It's going to be an interesting watch, I imagine, because it's
the early game as well, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, 6 p.m. over here, but yeah.
Yeah. So, so we'll see. We've got some points to make up, but I think it's going to be difficult to make up some points this week. I think on the other guys, unless they're seeing it totally different to us, and like I said, we don't know anything. In which case, we could fall even further behind. Who knows?
I mean, anything could happen. Who knows? I think I spent the whole off season, so I'm really fairly confident about where things would go. I got my dynasty team. I thought into a really good place, and then it just. But it's great, isn't it? That's why we love it.
Well, absolutely. This again, like we said before, this is why we love it, isn't it? I mean, just as a testament to that, and I totally get where you're coming from. I think I've got 5 or else 6 fantasy teams this year, and I'm 1-1 in every single one. Totally mediocre, middle of the road start to the season in terms of fantasy for me. So anyway, moving on. So Tua Watch, probably not a lot to say there this week. As we know, he got injured early in the game against Buffalo. When he got injured, he was 1 of 4 for 13 yards. grade of 52. I mean, I feel sorry for the guy in the sense that, you know, you don't want to see people getting injured, especially when they're in their early days and they're trying to kind of improve and lead a team like that. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to see how quickly he gets back. And in bruised ribs, I've seen quarterbacks before, pain-killing injection, and out you go. So I don't envisage him being sat for too long. Maybe a week or two, and then we'll see him back, and then hopefully he can. But then if he does take 2 weeks off and comes back, he's got Tampa Bay to look forward to. So maybe you might want to wait till week 6. You seen who he's got week 6?
No, he's got week 6. Us. Excellent.
Maybe he takes 3 weeks off with his bruised ribs and then goes to Jacksonville and puts up some points. Maybe we'll have to see.
More than likely.
So I mean, it was talked on. Some of the listeners suggested that we maybe want to switch tact if Tua, does kind of stay out. He's out of action for a little while, and I think people are very keen for me to break down Sam Darnold, and maybe give him some love. So maybe that's what we'll kind of do. Maybe that's what I'll do over the next week. Is I'll kind of shift my focus from Tua to Darnold and really kind of have a bit more of a look at how he's played and looking to dig into that a little bit more and maybe give him some love moving forward. So in terms of Mr. Relevant this week, so I've had some kind of positive feedback from some of the listeners in terms of some of the guys around this section. So that's good to see. More than happy to kind of extend this out and do a bit more if people find it interesting. I didn't get to watch a lot of college football this week, I must admit. I only watched 2 or 3 games, at the most. And I'm watching quite a bit of North Carolina. One, because I absolutely love their kit. I think it's absolutely amazing. And also, I'm kind of hoping that Sam Howell, plays well and is an early pick in next year's draft. So I've gone for one of his receivers this week that I didn't know that much about until this season. He's only a sophomore. He's called Josh Downs. So he's not draft eligible until 2023. But he's 5'10", 180 pounds. And this week against Virginia, who were an okay team, if not a brilliant team, he had 8 receptions for 203 yards, which is 25.4 yards per reception with 2 touchdowns. And again, they don't necessarily jump out as being amazing stats, but I think if you watch both touchdowns, it shows you kind of how diverse he is as a player, because he's one of these, let's say he's 5'10", 180. He's not that big. So he's kind of your slot type of receiver, you'd think. His first touchdown, it's more of a screen pass and he takes it for however many yards, 40 yards or something. And then the second touchdown is one totally opposite to that. It's one where it's a massive bomb downfield and he catches it diving out of the end zone. You need to watch them both. 2 totally different touchdowns. But 2 equally really, really, really good touchdowns. Shows he's got a lot of talent. So far this season's got a receiving grade of 93.2, 141 yards after the catch, 3 broken tackles. He's had 5 15+ yard receptions, and his quarterback's got a 158.3 passer rating when they target him. So I'm pretty sure that's the perfect passer rating.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And so last year, as I say, he's a freshman. He was a freshman last year, so he only played in 4 games, 7 receptions for 119 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he's explosive. He's getting downfield. This year so far, 3 games, 24 receptions for 399 yards, 4 touchdowns. Somebody to look out for in the future, because as I say, not draft eligible for a couple of years. But yeah, stood out for me in that game. Looked really, really good.
No, good. Start accumulating those picks for 2023.
Yeah, well, in terms of wide receivers, another one you want to watch. Ole Miss seemed to be like a factory of for wide receivers recently, don't they? I forget the guy's name, but maybe I'll feature him in the future. He looks very good, the Ole Miss wide receiver. Anyway,
away all at once.
With that, it's Whinge of the Week time. Over to you.
Are we doubling up again, are we?
I feel like you've got about like 500 to maybe go about.
Well, I'll be honest, it's a bit similar to last week, but I'd sat and I'd watched the NFL on Sky Sports, sponsored by Cinch, most of the evening. It's not about that, but so they were watching, their featured game was the LA Cowboys game. Then after that, there was obviously Seattle, Tennessee went to overtime. But so due to the licensing laws in America, Red Zone had to cut away after Seattle didn't get a touchdown on their opening drive. And then Sky Sports had nowhere to go. They couldn't show any footage. There was nothing doing. I don't have Game Pass. I couldn't switch over. And then I just got a text off Tom that was a little bit sweary. And then I think you put something in the group, and that was how I found out. But I couldn't watch it, which I just thought was slightly annoying and wound me up a bit, given that I was quite invested by that point. I've been watching the updates coming all night. It was a hell of a comeback from Tennessee. Neil Reynolds assured me that it'll be fixed for next week, so I will take him at his word and give him a pass this once and this once only.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you need to invest in Game Pass, really. I mean, it is really good. But the thing is then what you get stuck in is that situation where you just mentioned the fact that the early game was the Chargers Cowboys, so I couldn't watch that on Game Pass because Sky have got the rights, so I had to find it elsewhere because that was the game that I wanted to watch at that time. So yeah, well, no, I mean, I've got one. I think so.
Sounds like a good one.
So what are with, right? Why is it that Aaron Rodgers is allowed to throw the ball 60 yards down the field on every offside? And you know when opponents jump offside, right? Yeah. And the refs go, "Oh, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's doing this on purpose. We'll let it go." And it's a free play. And every other quarterback in the league gets stopped.
Whistled
when they do it. Whistled, and they go, "Oh no, well, we're doing it to protect you." Well, you're not. Somebody's jumped forward and then jumped back. I want to do what Rodgers does. It really winds me up. It happens to Mahomes quite a bit, which is where this has started. And then it seemed that it happened a couple of times through some of the games that I watched this week, and I was like, it's like I wonder if he goes to the refs at the beginning and goes, "I'm going to do this," and I suppose more plaudits to him if that's what he does. He calls it out and all the rest of it. But you need to be kind of
needs to be consistent.
He needs to be consistent. Yeah. And the other thing I had, I'm just going to throw this in really quickly. It's really good that they have like different commentators that come on each year. Each year there's kind of a different bit of a mix. There's somebody new that comes on in the commentary. But I just need Aqib Talib to just go and do something else. I cannot stand listening to him commentate. And it's not because he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's just I feel like I'm like watching some kind of episode of MTV Cribs or something. I rather than a football game. I don't know. I can't get on board with him as a commentator at all. To the point where I literally have muted him so far. Muted that game and just watched.
Oh right.
The games that he's done so far. Have you heard him? Have you?
Yeah, I heard him. I have heard him a bit. He's quite a flamboyant character, and his dress sense is interesting. He clearly knows the game inside out, but it's just a different voice, isn't it? And he's got a very, very different style. I know where you're coming from. Yeah,
that's it. And again, I'm sure I'll grow to adjust to it. And maybe I will like it in the future. But boy,
the first time I met you, I couldn't stand you. So
well, this is it. You know, opinions can change, right?
And now we agree on everything pretty much. Going on a positive though, I'd like that they've paired Kevin Burkhardt with Greg Olsen this year of Fox. That's their second team. I think I've always liked Kevin Burkhardt. I think Greg Olsen is superb.
Yeah, no, he's very good. He's very good. One of my favourites is Tony Romo. He's not for everybody.
He's
a bit like Marmite from what I can tell from people. People either seem to love him or hate him.
I think he's brilliant. Of course, I think he's brilliant. You think he's brilliant, so.
I've heard when he goes on down his little rants and he does his little screaming things that he does, and I've heard people are now referring to those as Romogasms on Twitter when he goes off on one of his things. So yeah, I think he's very good. He's knowledgeable, and I think it's just really interesting for him to sit there and even from where he's sat in the stadium and commentate, and he knows what's happening.
He knows exactly what
things a lot of the time, which is really fascinating. But yeah. So, anything else you want to talk about, or shall we wrap up?
Let's get out of here.
Yeah. Okay then. With that fourth down conversion, we will call it a day. On the Fourth and Whinges podcast. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.